Well, thank you everybody for joining once again. This is episode 3 of Whispering the Weather. Glad to see you all here again. My co-hosts Era and Lise, and a special guest, which we'll introduce right after we run through the schedule here that we have. So our little weekly banter that we'll do, and then our topic of the week is going to be space weather, followed by the week in weather news, weather in your world, weather lore. This time we'll be talking about moon, sun, and stars because we're keeping it in the space realm. This week in weather history, and then closing remarks and looking ahead. So let me get right into it and introduce our special guest. Today's guest is Gary Boyle, and I could read all of this stuff, but I let Gary present himself. Gary, over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your specialization.
Well, thank you much for having me. Yes, I'm known as backyard astronomer. That's a moniker I gave myself about 25 years ago. Astronomy started for me when I was 8 years old. It was a book called Stars in the elementary school library, and just to see how large our sun is, you can string 109 Earths across the sun like a string of pearls, and that floored me like a fish out of water. I've never stopped. Well, if you take a peppercorn, you could fill an 18-inch beach ball, just to give it perspective. And yet, our sun is just a typical star in the nighttime sky. So for the past 61 years, I've never stopped looking, teaching as much as I can, and really sharing the cosmos with as many people as I can.
Cool. And in the picture, what are we looking at in this piece of equipment you've got?
Yeah, that's a large robotic telescope. It's a Meade 12-inch, means it has a 12-inch mirror. And the way how telescopes work, especially on viewers that want to buy or a new telescope, I would say stay away from the big box stores. Although that $200 instrument will be pretty well a hobby killer. They have flimsy mounts. The optics are terrible. Something like this is a few $1,000s, mind you, but $4,000 or $5,000, and can go higher. But astronomy doesn't have to be this elaborate. You can start with binoculars, just learn constellations. You take it at your own pace. Just like if you first ride a bike, then eventually you want to buy a Lamborghini. You wouldn't want to buy the Lamborghini. Start small and work your way up. So these type of telescopes are robotic. They have motors. They actually have a computer built into the keypads. You can fire up the objects that you want to look at, and it's permanently polar mount in my observatory. So this is the Cadillac way to go sort of thing, but doesn't always have to be.
Interesting. Well, it's a beautiful piece of equipment. And so before I jump into, I wanted to get into the solar cycle 25. I wanted to ask you a little bit about some stuff that happened about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago regarding some of these big sonic booms that were heard across the U.S., one off of the coast of Massachusetts, another in the Southeast, another in the Midwest. What are those items that would have caused that noise? And is there something special about what the Earth is traveling through right now that would have precipitated that amount of activity?
Well, the Earth sees about 100 tons of debris every day, mostly in the form of dust, and these small meteoroids burn up in the atmosphere because these shooting stars, they're really called a meteor. And when they're large enough, when they hit the ground, the surviving pieces of meteorite. So many tons are being burning throughout Earth's atmosphere, of course, inland the ocean, forests, on snow up in the Arctic and Antarctic. But some do hit the ground. Up to here now, the sonic booms registering on Richter scale. That's a little disconcerting for sure. Could there be larger pieces now that are surviving? Now, these pieces are not hitting the ground, but it's really pancaking the atmosphere. And that's what's causing the sonic boom. But I've never heard a time period when so many of these reports are being registered. And of course, too, with the doorbell cams, ring cams, your dash cams on cars are picking more of these up every day. But to hear these things is really something for sure.
Yeah, and you make a good point, right? With everybody with phones and all of these cameras around their house, it's much easier to report on this stuff than 100 years ago. It could have been happening 100 years ago, but no one was catching it or recording it. So yeah, but interesting. It was an interesting time. At one point I said in a 2-day span, all of these are happening. Are the aliens finally coming? But I will get into that later.
Yep.
Your perspective on the aliens.
Yeah, but don't forget
Uh,
100 years ago, Chicken Little was running around telling everybody the sky was falling. So that was always up.
Right. So solar cycle 25 is the cycle that we're in now. And I remember around 2019, 20, starting to hear a buzz about how they were starting to think, oh, this is going to be stronger than we thought. And I thought, oh, this might be the strongest solar cycle that we've ever had. In the end, not so much. But what are your impressions of this particular solar cycle and where we stand in it right now?
The solar cycle 25 is pretty active. We've had some major meteor showers, not meteor showers, but auroras. And also, especially last year, we had a ground leveling event by the sun. That's another aspect of just the solar activity, something like the Carrington event. But every year is different. Sometimes solar mass is pretty high, which we're at. And first of all, every 11 years, sun goes through from peak to peak a solar maximum. And different years are higher, different years are lower. So it's like weather. They're saying here that it's supposed to start raining at 2 a.m. It didn't. So it's like the chance of showers are there. The chance of the sun getting very active is always there, but it's science. I mean, it's not a very finite thing. The sun wants to do what the sun wants to do. So the fact that we're having solar max is good compared to back in the 1600s, back to 1645 to 1715 was the Maunder minima. Now, I said we have solar max every 11 years. So for 70 years, almost a little more than 6 solar cycles, there are pretty well no sunspots. It was known as a little ice age. In fact, Thames River in England froze. There are even paintings of people skating on the Thames. So the sun does play a huge part in weather on the Earth.
Yeah, and every time I think of going into the solar minimum, I'm always like concerned, is this going to be the next ice age that's going to come? Because there's been a talk about how eventually another one will come, and but I want to ask you in regards to a Carrington event. For those people that are not familiar with what that is, can you explain what Carrington event is, and then what would it take in order for us to experience that again?
The Carrington event was a huge, huge solar storm. It was an S5 Hoffman scale. We haven't had any of those up to now, which is a good thing. This was back in 1859 on September 1st and 2nd, a couple of days before Richard Carrington, who loved to look at the sun, did fantastic sketches, made his own filter for his telescope to look at the sun. But he noticed white flashes near these darker sunspots. That doesn't occur normally. In fact, these spots were brighter than the surface of the sun. They figured, uh-oh, start car, we're in trouble. But a day later, the massive northern lights were seen. In fact, it was during the Klondike Gold Rush in the West. And miners were getting up, started making their breakfast, the bacon, eggs, whatever. The sun was up behind the clouds. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. That's how bright the aurora really, really was. What it did too is back then too, the telegraph was the only way to send messages across. We have batteries in 2 of the stations that were able to send a message or electronic field across the lines. They unhooked the batteries, were still able to send the messages through. In fact, power lines caught fire, the poles caught fire, even reports of paper in the machines that caught fire, even the operators got an electrical shock. So that was just from the power of the sun. You don't want that happening nowadays. The only good thing was back then, electricity wasn't what we need today. We need it for everything, for water filtration, for heating, for everything. So imagine if that happened today, we'd be building outhouses and wells in our backyards. So, but to predict when that's going to happen, it's really hard. Again, like I said, the sun wants to do what it wants to do. People believe that events like this, Carrington events, could happen about once every 500 years, but something half as powerful can happen every 50 years. So we could be in the sights for the sun to really have a hissy fit and aim a huge exolar flare toward the Earth.
And the key there is it has to be towards the Earth, right? Because the sunspots, I mean, the solar flares are happening regardless of what side of the sun it's happening. But even if a sunspot were to put out a CME at an angle, we maybe get a glancing blow, but not a direct. So in order for it to be a Carrington, it needs to be direct.
Okay, yeah, just a garden hose. You're having fun with the garden hose, just spread up all over the place, and boom, right towards you. And then if it's aimed right toward us, then we get the full brunt of it. And that's what happened during the Carrington event. And these sunspots were huge. The group was what we call a naked eye sunspot, not to look at the sun with your eye, but with a filter in front, a recognized solar filter, and how huge it was. Remember, 109 Earths fit across the sun. See something like this 150 million kilometers away, that is huge.
And when we had, and you probably know the dates better than I do, but I think in the very early 80s, and then again at some point in either the 90s or early 2000s, we had two events that blacked out Quebec.
Yes, I was living back in Montreal at the time. It was March 13th of 1989, known as the Quebec blackout. It wasn't just Quebec, oh, Hydro-Quebec, they pulled the plug on the extension cord and we went out. No, the sun hit us. In fact, transformers in New Jersey melted. And we're not talking about transformers here. They melted by the power of the sun. And since then, the sun has been studied more and more satellites in space look at the sun 24/7. But yeah, it's still affecting power grids nowadays. And you wouldn't want to be up in a jetliner during a massive electrical storm because during an S3 storm, the solar storm, the hyperscale, scale, you could equal to one chest X-ray, but a very rare S5 equal to 10 chest X-rays if you're above the Earth, pretty well above, well, within the atmosphere, but not with protection that we have down here.
Is this something that could be forecasted? Could it be predicted that it may occur that humans could be prepared for? Or is it at the sun's will?
Well, yeah, since I'm not sure when it started, but spaceweather.com is a real entity in the United States. They monitor, like I said, the sun 24/7. Now it's satellites, and they know when. In fact, we have, not me personally myself, but there are two satellites called the stereo satellites parked on toward the sun on like either side, so they can see when something is around a big spot. So it gives us good warning when like that hurricane is something around, and then prepares aviation, power grids, whatnot, that potential of these big storms. But when we get a huge X flare rips off the sun, again, it has to be right toward us to really give us a lot of damage. But the glancing blow can still give us a lot of headaches.
I'm curious about, I read recently that some of Elon Musk's satellites were affected by geomagnetic storms.
Yeah, that was back in 1922. It was February the 4th when he just sent up another rocket of Starlinks. There were 49 Starlink on the rocket, and they were starting to deploy. Once they get in orbit, they're starting to be jettisoned. If you've never seen a Starlink train at night, it's really something to see. This goes through the image of about 50 satellites. Well, in this case, they were just starting to deploy, and over the next few days to get the higher and higher orbit to where they need to be parked. Now, what happens during massive solar storms is the Earth's atmosphere heats up, it balloons, and it gets denser, which means that any satellite that was above the atmosphere is now in the atmosphere and can get dragged down because the atmosphere is more dense. We lost 40 out of 49 satellites by just that one launch.
And that was in 2022.
2022, February 4th.
So a question for, and I just changed the slide here. So this the current conditions as of this morning on the surface of the sun. So for a cycle that supposedly has peaked, there's a heck of a lot of spots on the surface facing the Earth today. So first question, do you believe that we've peaked, or are we still potentially looking at a second peak?
Yeah, some helioscientists, some scientists are saying peak may only come in July. So we might not be there yet. And even though we have the 11-year solar cycle, sometimes every 22 years is a super cycle. So we're not sure yet. Things are getting quite active, some X flares, some class flares, which are not as strong, but are still quite strong. But the X-type flare, right off the scale, when hit Quebec was, I think, an X22, right off the scale. So we haven't seen those high ones yet, but yeah, the sun is putting on a pretty good show. And the great thing about the show is great chance from Northern Lights. But a couple of years ago, we had a wonderful display seen in May. It was May of 2024. And we're seeing down to Florida and Puerto Rico,
Wow,
which we usually don't see. They don't see that low. So it was a wonderful visual aspect, colorful. What the colors are really is our atmosphere is made up of 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen and trace of all the other stuff. Well, the oxygen comes in two layers. The green coloring is for oxygen in the lower atmosphere, the reds in the higher atmosphere. As you're seeing, the purples and pinks and blues, that's the nitrogen elements that are being heated up and excited.
It's really beautiful.
It's
I
an
had a
beautiful.
teeny question to ask you because, we were talking about that meteorite that a couple of weeks ago, but I know in Russia, they actually had one that did hit the ground. I think was it Chublyska back a couple of years back?
Well, in Chelyabinsk, Russia, that was actually back in 2015.
Right.
Again, dash cam, and if you get on the internet, wonderful videos of dash cam that sees this thing blazing through the sky. It's 9 o'clock in the morning, almost as bright as the sun. Some pieces did hit the ground, but mostly, again, it was like pancake in the atmosphere. The air couldn't get out of the way in time; it was moving it so fast. And this is about the size of a small school, so it was a pretty big piece. So this pancake in the atmosphere pushed down. A lot of windows were broken. About 1,500 people were injured, mostly by flying glass, because they saw something right in the sky. Oh, what's happening? And a few seconds later, and they got hit by flying glass. And even garage doors of factories, again, video cameras show garage doors being blown in like tinfoil. So just the power, the atmosphere, just by this one semi-large meteorite, but still, ask the dinosaurs that they have a space program 6 million years ago, an asteroid 6 miles wide or 10 kilometers did hit here.
So in regards to creating an aurora, and if we're looking at just the conditions on the surface of the sun as to what would create the perfect conditions for aurora, the difference between a CME and a coronal hole, and which of those two is the culprit for creating the aurora?
I'll say it's the CMEs, coronal mass ejections. First of all, when the sun has a hissy fit, throwing up solar flares, a flare rips off the sun and travels always at the speed of light. So this is why when you see videos on detectors, you see the flash, and all of a sudden you get the static. Let's try at the speed of light. It takes about 3 days for these billion-ton clouds of charged particles that leave the sun that move it out. And that's what gives us these geomagnetic storms for hours or even days. But when it comes to the opening of the sun, which doesn't open up, but the atmosphere semi-opens up these holes, I'm not quite sure the correlation between those and CMEs, but I know that when they say a CME is coming in, you might get a good display of northern lights.
Okay.
Just by the way, on the screen, on the bottom left, you see my two granddaughters looking at the aurora. My daughter took that image with her cell phone. That's how good these cell phones are nowadays. You don't need the Canons and Nikons, the DSLR cameras. The cell phones today are even doing wonderful Milky Way shots. Like this one in the middle, I took from my property with my Canon camera. But just the cell phones nowadays, that's remarkable. They're pretty little cameras with a phone built.
Yeah, and the event that you were talking about that was in the month of May a couple of years ago, I had gone out up north to go and look at that because everyone was talking about how it was going to be a great show. And I remember driving along the 15 and seeing some ribbons. But once I looked through my phone, then I really saw it clear. And I'm wondering, I guess it's because of this, the exposure, the settings on the phone that allow you to see low light conditions and everything comes up much brighter.
Yeah, true. Any kind of photography and film photography, which I did way back in the early days with Fujifilm film. Yeah, they bring out colors more. And don't forget your eye to see color and faint light together. We see color during the day because our 4 million cones in the middle are responsible for colors. But then at night, when we have faint conditions now, 120 million rods per eye really not kick in. And that's why if you're out in the country without moonlight, without starlight, you can pretty well see pretty well. But once you start moving into lighted conditions, people shrink. That takes about 20 minutes to get to your dark adaptation. So the eye's not made to see colors as much as what film can take. And especially nowadays, you put in Photoshop, you can really bring up contrast, like really massage that image like artists do
So our atmosphere deflects a lot of the radiation that comes out of this stuff. But if we didn't have this atmosphere, we'd pretty well fry up with these.
Association. Let's put it that way. The Earth had been sterilized a long time ago because we have a core at the middle of the Earth, about the size of the moon, about the size of Australia, almost as hot as the sun, but 1,000 degrees Celsius. Then this core, solid core, is sitting around a molten layer, and that's producing a beautiful dynamo, just like you take the shavings with the bar magnet on Earth, just see those beautiful lines. That's what happens out in space. You have two Van Allen belts, one 1,000 to 10,000 kilometers above, and the second Van Allen belt, 15 to 25,000 kilometers. And that's what really protects us from these incoming solar particles, radiation from the sun, which is what it really is. So I'd imagine if I had a garden with a sprinkler setting, and I'm shooting at you, but you have an umbrella. So most of the water is deflecting away, and some fall into your head. The same thing with our magnetic field, repels most of the particles, and some do bleed into the coals that give us northern lights. But during the heavy storms, it really squeezes the shock wave of the Van Allen belts. More of that comes in, and then we see even greater northern lights. If we didn't have a protective shield, we wouldn't be here. And that's what happened to Mars. They believe about 3 billion years ago, Mars had more water than the Earth. It had a core like the Earth, but Mars is half the size of our planet, which means it cools up fast. If you put a roast beef and a few hamburger patties in the oven and take them out, which is going to cool fast, hamburger patties. So when it's cool, the magnetic field or the core stops spinning, magnetic field stops flowing, solar winds began to eat away the atmosphere and evaporate the water up at the space. So it's a good thing that we have a good healthy core to keep us alive.
Yeah, I mean,
Huzzah.
yeah, huzzah. So we've got meteor showers actually coming up in this current, what are we today? We're the 10th.
We are the 10th.
So am I saying it correct? Arietids?
Yes, the Arietids, which is a daytime meteor shower for us. In fact, it began when the sun was above the horizon, so no one could see it. But yeah, it's just one of these daytime things. It could have been a real good shower. It gained maybe 100, even 200 meters per hour, which is huge. Now, other meteor showers throughout the year can give us 5, 10, 15 per hour. It's not too bad, 15, 20 per hour. Well, once every 3 minutes. And that's if you're looking in the right direction. But come August, that is one of the best meteor showers of the year, called the Perseids, meaning the kids of Perseus. And Perseus is in the eastern sky, and we can see about 180 to 100 meters per hour. Now, every meteor shower also depends on how wide is the moon, how bright is it. If you're going to have full moon, it's going to wash the sky. Even out here in the country, the sky is washed out. The brightest of stars are only seen, which means only the brightest meteors are seen. But during the Perseids this year, it's the same date as the total solar eclipse, mostly in Europe. Well, we're going to get a partial solar eclipse here on August 12th. So it's going to be a perfect night. No moon will be seen. Although we should see at least about 80 to 100. It's always best if you can go take up your skies. Do be aware of trespassing. Don't do that. But go with some friends and set up your chairs in all different areas. So different areas of sky are always being looked at. Bring out your camera, maybe not your cell phone camera, but a DSLR. Take some 30, 60-second exposures on a tripod, a wide angle lens, maybe something will register into the field of view. And one of the best meteor showers of the year, good and bad, are the Geminids. But they're in December, and we know it's on the ground in December. Snow and cold weather. But these are slow, graceful meteors, usually around December 12th, 13th, or 14th, 120 per hour, colorful fireballs. So any night you're out, you're bound to see some shooting stars. Could be a piece of space junk, actual piece of the solar system, a big rising in our atmosphere, and make a wish. Although I'm sure I need to make a wish.
Well, Gary, I mean, we could talk to you for hours, and I'm just looking at my clock, and I'm realizing, wow, I've been so absorbed by what you're talking about, and it does interest me. So it's easy to let time fly by. But I really appreciate you joining us, and you're of course welcome to stay with us through the rest of our weather topics here. But definitely makes you think just beyond just normal clouds and sun and rain and snow, but everything else that's going on around us. And there is, space weather exists, and it's part of our weather forecasting. So I thank you for everything you brought to this discussion here.
Just like to leave you with the words of
Oh, yes, please.
when it says, I quote, remember to look up at the stars, not down at your feet. Try to make sense what you see and wonder what makes the universe exist. Be curious, end quote. We should always be curious, no matter what we're looking at. Let's go to schools and explain to teach the kids is science is wonderful. Anything learn for research. Look at the sky is really us because we're all made of star stuff.
Perfect.
And
How
and
romantic.
before and I thank you for that. But before I get back into our earthly weather here, aliens, do they exist?
Yes, well, the government only allows me to say so much, so aliens to some extent do exist. The first 92 elements on the periodic table, right to uranium, are found throughout the entire universe. Hydrogen and oxygen that make up water are found everywhere. To have water, the elements that keep recipe pretty well. While with the water, the heat of the star being the oven, making our cake, our muffins. There must be life out there somewhere. They're not communicating with us, the joke is, bypassers. Maybe because they're in a different dimension and we cannot communicate cross over that dimension yet. We're in 3 dimensions. If a 2-dimensional fictitious person would see something come down because a 3rd dimension saw 2, a 2 couldn't see 3. So why can't the aliens be in the 5th, 7th, 8th dimension? But we don't know yet. Might be the type of physics with the James Webb Space Telescope in the future. I mean, it's just that communication barrier that could be keeping us from communicating. So they can be looking at us. So say hi, wave, everybody.
Be nice.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, as long as they don't think of us as food, like, earthly tater tots. That's my always worry when I think about aliens,
We are big bags of meat.
I have to say throughout your explanation, because I'm learning more about it, or I'm getting, and your real world examples are so clear and good to hear, because that makes sense. That rather than just a scientific terminologies, it really did help a lot, and I really appreciated that.
Thank you. So I encourage anyone to seek out the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. We have major centers in every major city, or if you have small towns, there are bound to be astronomy clubs around. A good place to pick the brains of astronomers for decades to look at the sun, at the sky, sun, whatnot. On photography, on telescopes, real good source. And always you can email me through my website. I love to teach, and I'll give you links to telescopes if that's in your office.
And just to plug your website before we switch topic.
It's www.wondersofastronomy.com.
Perfect. Wondersofastronomy.com. Thank you so much. So let's continue with our week in the weather news, which luckily compared to last week, it was a little quieter. So I decided to go into this week's latest release from the ENSO forecast, which continues to support a strong El Nino. And the graph that you see on this slide in the upper right-hand corner is starting to narrow in terms of the certainty of the strength of the El Ninos coming. So it's positioning itself to be a strong or very strong El Nino, which puts itself into, I think, 2015, 2016, if I'm looking at analog years, 1982, 83 as well. So it could be an interesting, it most likely will be a very interesting fall-winter period. Once again, it supports a kind of a lopsided summer where we are, quite warm today, warm into the weekend, and then we get cool next week. And so up and down. And we do have a negative NAO, so that's North Atlantic Oscillation, that's coming up right after this Friday, where we get negative again. So in the short term, the weather will get on the cooler side, the wetter side, and that's just the way the summer is going to fluctuate that way, and we'll have the warmth come back. But hey, it keeps things interesting. So yeah, El Nino continues to look like it'll be a strong to very strong come the winter. And I also want to talk a little bit about what's coming up this weekend in events. And Era, this is yours.
Okay. Okay, so we've got, of course, the big picnic electronic. This is fun. Jean Drapeau every single weekend. Some of the biggest DJs in the world. So you can head off and go dancing for fans of chamber music festivals. That is going on right now until the 21st of June. If you like the Fringe Festival, over 500 artists, and that is... you'd see the program at montrealfringe.ca. There are 800 indoor theater performances, so perfect for lousy weather. You could see some of the world's top graffiti artists. I don't know if you've been downtown right now, but Saint Laurent is blocked off. And so from now until the 14th, it's Mural Festival. There's block parties. There's live music. It's amazing. And when I was downtown this week, I saw them setting up Place des Festivals downtown near Place des Arts, and it's the Franco de Montréal. Actually, I don't know if you remember, Elise, but we used to do weather down there, and that's where I discovered a lot of incredible people like Ariane Moffat. The Francos is new, upcoming, and it is a lot of fun. There are some incredible artists in this province. And then we also have Cirque du Soleil. It's back in the old port of Montreal. Tickets are available for that online. And then I'm going to mispronounce this. I know I am, but the Suene per tu Popolo. It's a community-based left-field music festival presenting local and international musicians performing in a variety of styles, such as free jazz, improv, avant rock, noise, avant fold, and 20th century from June 16th, so starting at the beginning of next week, until June the 28th at La Sala Rosa on Saint Laurent Boulevard. And did my sound stay okay through that?
And the weather for Sunday going to support a lot of this indoor stuff because it's probably likely going to rain a better part of the day. So
Well,
for
there
anything
we
that's
go. We have all of the choices that anybody can go to, as well as indoor or outdoor, depending on what the weather will be. And we have the forecast for the weather too. So
yes.
just a bit of
and
everything.
you can check all of these festivals are all online. And also, if you want to be a tourist in your city, you'll find all of these on the tourismemontreal.org site.
Are you going to be attending any of these, Era? Because last week Lise and I were able to meet up with you on the weekend at one of these events at the at McCown's Pub. And so, will you be attending any of these so people can come and stalk you?
Well, I do. I love dancing. And thanks everybody who came out to the charity event last weekend, the Jamboree at McCown's Pub. And it was because of Lise and Mark. We were supposed to have a big thunderstorm. The skies were looking ferocious. But when you guys came out, I think the weather whisperers scared it away. So that was great. But I will probably be going with a few thousand other people to check out Picnic Electronic, because even though there's thousands of people there, you can still dance like nobody's watching because you'll just be in a crowd. But if you
That's
see
what we
somebody
want.
dancing like Elaine from Seinfeld, that will be me.
We all have
Yes.
that visual.
Send it to me.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Next up, the weather in your world. So yeah, speaking of the weekend, so Friday, there's a low pressure system at the north of Quebec. So that's going to be bringing in a warm, humid southerly flow. It'll be quite warm, up to 28, 29, 30 in some places. I wouldn't be surprised to see a 31 here and there. So, but with that also comes a chance for pop-up thunderstorms and showers. So just be prepared for that. Bring your umbrella wherever you go. On Saturday, we have more stable air in most of southern Quebec. I think towards Quebec City, it'll be a little choppy in terms of some of the showery conditions. But if you got a day where you got to get some stuff done outdoors, probably Saturday morning through early to late Saturday afternoon is your best time. And it'll be still quite pleasant and warm with 25, 26, 27 even in some spots. And then we get into Sunday where blah, 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 blah. Unfortunately, we get some rain coming back. As my sister tells me, enough already.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have about anywhere between 10 and 20 millimeters, 25 up towards Quebec City with a passing cold front that'll be coming through. So probably the day where you want to go and do some of those indoor activities.
Right.
And
Indoor projects, any indoor projects. That's the way
Yeah.
we used to say it. Saturday will be the outdoor activity, anything you need to get done. But Sunday, if you have any indoor projects that you need to get done, plan for that. And it'll be still a productive weekend.
Yes.
Lee's always looking on the bright side
I
of life.
was
So, well, lawn mowing forecast, and I'll go through these pretty quickly because a lot of these are repetitive in terms of what to look for. Yeah, Saturday is your best day to if you really need to cut the grass. Is it going to be perfect? No, it'll probably still be a little damp, but that's going to be the day this weekend to do it. And then maybe Monday if you can play hooky, cut your grass. Golf forecast. Saturday is probably your best day. Monday as well. Sunday, if you find a spot here and there where it's not raining, then go for it. But just be ready for that to happen. Farming, if you're looking at hay, this ain't the time. You just theoretically you need 3 days of sunny weather in order to do a proper hay. And I got chastised from what I said last week in terms of there being 3 days of good weather to do haying, which was Monday,
Uh-oh.
Tuesday, supposedly Wednesday, which is today, which you probably could have gotten away with it.
I think there was
Uh,
an hour earlier, and then that's it so far.
Yeah, but I was told that no, the conditions were still not right because there was still too much humidity, too much moisture in the hay. So
Wow.
we need to dry out a little more before. So just keep on growing that hay, and you'll get a good season. Cottage country forecast. Listen, Saturday, there's your day. You probably don't want to go swimming yet, but if you're up for that, go for it. But Friday, remember, showers and thunderstorms, some of them could be severe. So keep an eye for that as well. UV forecast, Saturday is the highest day. So get your solar stuff on. And Monday will be high, but a little bit of cloud will keep it a little less aggressive. But regardless, I think we were talking about it before the show started. Even cloudy today, you'll still burn. And I think people still have a feeling that clouds protects them. No, you can spend a couple of 2-3 hours in the clouds and you'll still get
Yeah.
red. So protect yourselves. And now we get into this week's weather lore. And unfortunately, Gary's no longer here, but in honor of him, I chose to keep it in the moon, sun, and stars. The first one is something that I think mentioned something to it last week, which was
Yeah.
a ring around the moon, and rain or snow soon. Yes, that's there's science that supports that. On the red sky at night, sailor's delight. So it says it's mostly true. I still believe it to be to be really true.
Mhm.
When I see the red sky at night, I just expect the rain to be coming. But there is science that supports that. An interesting one: twinkling stars mean bad weather, and the reason why they twinkle is there's atmospheric turbulence and moisture that makes stars appear to twinkle more dramatically, sometimes ahead of a weather change. So I never even really paid attention to that. I just
Have you
thought
ever
it
seen
was.
that? Have you ever seen the twinkling stars?
Well, I think that if you look at the stars long enough, they'll do anything you want. I mean, I've literally been sitting outside with a fire going on in the winter and looked at stars and was convinced that they were starting to move in opposite directions and that they were space. Anyways, it's a sad story, but then I realized just the longer you look at anything and you want to convince yourself something's moving, it'll move.
It'll
But I've never. I mean, I've seen twinkle in the sense of it kind of like it does that kind of little, yeah, there's a little twinkle.
maybe.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was just like, the star was happy or something. But no, it's science. Aurora means the storms are coming. That's not true. The auroras would not have anything to do with any storms. It's fully the energy from the sun, as Gary was talking about. Full moon causes storms. That's also false. And planting by the moon, plant above ground crops during a waxing moon and root crops during a waning moon. As much as this sounds fun and fantastic, there's nothing to prove that. So, but those are just some of the fun
Yeah.
Out of
weather
all
lore.
of them, it's one of my friends, she'd always say red skies at night, sailors, every time she saw it. So it was an expression that I heard very often, and it is somewhat true.
A red sky in the morning, that will mean that you've got a lot of suspended particulate. And when we had those forest fires in 2023,
Oh, yeah.
we had about 3 or 4 mornings where that sun was like blood red.
Yes.
When I was a kid, I used to say, "What do I care? I'm not on a boat." But that was just kid logic. So this week in weather, June 10th, the Worcester tornado. As much as I've always wanted to say Worcester, it's
You're
You're
Worcester.
saying it right.
Worcester? You want me to say Worcester properly?
No. I have a friend who
Yeah.
actually who's watching this. To say hi to Keith from Lincoln, Lincolnshire, who watches this show, and he always tells me it's Worcester.
Worcester. So Worcester in 1953 had one of the deadliest tornadoes in New England history, with 94 fatalities. I was actually surprised when I pulled this out. 4,000 plus buildings damaged and destroyed, and 94 deaths. And I'm trying to see if there was an estimated over 300-kilometer-an-hour winds, which I believe would have made it an F4.
Yeah.
So that's quite something up in New England in the early part of summer. So it's not even end of spring. So so that happened in history. The North American heat wave began June 11th in 1988, and I vaguely remember this, just graduating high school, and remember it being quite hot for that time of year. Extreme heat, temperatures 5 to 10 degrees above average for weeks, with severe drought and wildfires and a lot of economic damage. So anyone remember that, 1988?
No, but I think now we've got a fancier word for it now. It's a heat dome. You hear American
Yes.
forecasters talking a lot about that.
Exactly.
But
What we would've-
that was really, I remember that. It was about my fourth year in Montreal, and I had thought, well, Montreal next to the St. Lawrence, I bet you it's going to be a really cool summer. I was wrong.
Yeah. Well, I think if I remember, it's, temperatures over 30, and it was relentless.
No, we didn't have that.
Yeah.
Maybe in 88, if we'd had something like at 35 with a humidex of 45, that would have been like earth shattering.
Yeah. But back then we
Yeah.
didn't talk about humidexes anyway. Like it
No.
wasn't a thing.
So that was June 11th starting, and then Alberta flood disasters was between, I think it was probably the effects of it were beyond June 15th and 16th, but there was a heck of a lot of rain. 100 to 150 millimeters of rain fell within 48 hours, just swelling the Bow and the Bow River and the High River in Alberta, and that displaced 100,000 people and more, $6+ billion of damage, and a lot of agricultural impact in that area. So, and you think to yourself, well, in the prairies in June, usually it's dry. Mind you, it's been quite wet even this year in Calgary. I've had some clients telling me that they're exasperated by the amount of rain that they've been getting. So who knows?
Well, in Alberta, southern Alberta, the weather fluctuations, it's one of the places that it fluctuates the most across Canada, where they could be 18, 19 in the middle of winter one day and minus 15 the next day. The winds are strong, heavy rain at times, then it dry. It's everything but in like a 24-hour or 48-hour period.
And Liz, you lived out in the West for a while, right?
I lived in Saskatchewan, yes.
Yeah. So was it pleasant? Did you have nice summers?
Oh my goodness. So we were from Eastern Canada, and we called it that way because it was bright and sunny and 30 degrees all summer long one summer. For those who were coming in was perfect because it's dry heat. There's no humidity. But for the farmers, it was devastating. There was no water. There was no rain. They were suffering something terrible. But for someone who, somebody who doesn't have anything to do with agriculture in that area at all, it was beautiful. And when I get off the plane in Montreal and you get hit by that wall of humidity, you get used to dry heat, basically.
And did you
I was in
enjoy
Calgary for the 88 Olympics, and we had a big problem because Calgary has the Chinooks, where the air comes up over the mountain and stuff like that. And I was working for CBC at the time, and we were doing Super G, and there was no snow for you really need a lot of snow for Super G.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think despite the humidity, I'll still choose hilly terrain rather than the flatlands of Saskatchewan. Nothing against Saskatchewan. I love the folks out there.
Yeah.
But
well, I was in Saskatoon, and it's a nice little town. It really is. But when you come out, it is flat as a pancake everywhere.
What's that old joke? You let your dog out and you can see him run for 2 days?
Yes, exactly.
So the one viewer question I got this week was, how did we meet? So who wants to take that story?
Well, I think Mark we have kind of an interesting connection. So, Mark, you had your pastime was forecasting, and you would post them on Facebook. And you were always saying predicting the next 5 or 7 days, and you predict precipitation. I don't remember if it was summer or winter, but you predicted a storm that came in, and you were the one who got it right. Meteo Media didn't get it right. Environment Canada didn't get it right, but Mark got it right. And it caught our eye at CTV. So we invited Mark on set with Tara, and we did a weather segment, and that's how we met. But I was following you before then anyways, but that's how we met, you and I, as your passion and your pastime gave us better forecasting than some of those professionals.
And I think, Era, for us, it was you. Well, we met for the very first time just last week,
this weekend,
face to face. Yes.
But I've been a huge fan of yours for years. I mean, if you work weather in Montreal, you got to follow Mark Sirois. And as for Lisa, we worked on the Weather Network together. The English Weather Network used to be in Montreal, and we had a lot of fun with that two-way glass, and I'm not saying anything else.
I remember. You know what? It's funny you say that. I won't say it. But it's funny you say that. I go, Era, I think she... Yeah. It's been a while.
I was really young. That's, immature.
So speaking of being right all the time, well, I'm disappointed to say that I'm the one that's losing in this predictions contest that we have, because the first week, the thing was how much rain had fallen at Trudeau Airport, and it was Lisa got that right, or what came the closest to the amount. This week, Era gets it right because she said 29 would be the highest temperature of this week.
I said...
No, Lee said it. I said 31.
Mm-hmm.
Lee's again.
Was it Lee? So
yeah.
I was sure it was, you had said, well, Lee's, I'm sorry. So Era, it's Lee's has got two... And I have, well, it's a good thing I didn't have it here, because the slide would have been wrong, because I had a star for both of you. I was sure because I had written down the numbers and I didn't write down the names. And I was sure that Era had spoken first, but it was Lisa that said 31. No, Lisa had said 29.
Yeah.
Yep.
Era spoke first and said 31, and I was 30 in the middle. The highest temperature of the week actually was last Wednesday at 29.4.
Right.
So I was 1.1 degree away from having it skewed up towards me.
Right.
So congratulations, Lise. You are the prognosticator of the week.
Huzzah!
And
it's called beginner's luck.
Well, so for folks that want to ask questions, once again, the Facebook page, Instagram, and the YouTube is probably the best spot. Just make a comment underneath the video that you watch, and we'll share it with you on this broadcast. So it feels like this has been a long one. We had a couple of glitches that I'll correct in post-production, but once again, thanks to both of you for joining on a kind of a muggy, gloomy kind of Wednesday early evening. Have yourself a good supper. We will reconvene next week. I have no idea what the subject will be. We'll come up with it.
We will.
But there's always stuff going on in the weather, so I'm sure it'll be always interesting. So thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day and week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Ciao!